Hi everybody, this is Noelle from Oakwood Village Petitti Garden Centers, and we are doing an update on deer resistant perennials. It's June, it's perennial gardening month. Things are busting into color, absolutely gorgeous. We wanted to show you what works well for us. We have a lot of deer issues in Northeast Ohio, a lot of deer browsing, a lot of trouble. And so when you're looking for plant material, and I always tell this to customers, you want to look for plants that are thorny or sharp. Now, I'm not talking about a rose that has thorns on the inside of the plant's body and on the stems and it's covered by foliage. No. Like if it's going to work, it needs to have those sharp needles or thorns on the outside of the plant. Okay, so think barberry when we're talking about this. So thorny or sharp needled. Junipers are great in that respect too. I'm getting into the woody shrubs, but that's what I'm talking about when we're talking about sharp or thorny. Okay, the second thing that you want to look for is, or actually smell for, is fragrance. Now, aroma, we should say, it could be a very strong, good aroma, or it could be a strong, bad aroma, okay, or not so appealing to us. But either way, smellier, the better, okay, as far as your repellency is concerned, and to reduce that browsing. So do look for smelly plants. And so if you're touching your plants, and I'm going to show you, this is meadow sage or salvia. It's perennial salvia. It's a great grower for us in the sun, and man, it has got wonderful aroma, sagey aroma, okay? So you don't see damage on this. Now, don't get me wrong, when they're young and they're taste testing everything, yeah, you'll see a little bit of nibbling maybe on the salvia. They're gonna learn real quickly that that's smelly and they don't wanna eat that, okay? So keep that in mind. So the thorns or the needles, we're talking about smell. The other thing that you wanna look for are plants that have really thick, leathery foliage, like the opposite of a tulip, okay, or the opposite of a hosta. We have a hard time with hosta because they're so succulent. It's like a salad for the deer. That leaf is very, very smooth, typically very smooth, very, very succulent. So we want to stay away from that type of plant. So if you look at this daisy, this is Real Glory Shasta daisy, but Taylor, can you look at this foliage here? Look at how it's really, really thick. It has a real waxy, thick substance to it, but look at how sharp the edges are. And then that foliage going up is fairly thick and sharp too. And then the flowers are smelly as well. So they just don't like that, okay? So look for those attributes in your plants. The last one that I'm gonna mention is fuzzy, okay? So the fuzzier the plant is, the better resistance it's going to have too. So I'm talking lamb's ear. Everybody knows lamb's ear, silvery, fuzzy, gray foliage plant, sometimes blooms, sometimes it doesn't, but that's what we're talking about. Lamb's ear, dusty miller, they all have that super fuzz, and that's what you're talking about. So we were doing a segment about coral bells, and I was saying, the fuzzier the better. So if you want to grow coral bells but you have a deer issue, then look for and feel for the fuzziest varieties. That's going to help you in the long run so they don't have browsing. So with all those things in mind, and don't get me wrong, there's some plants that are toxic too, okay? So naturally toxic, so something like a Lenten rose, for example. Naturally toxic, they're not, if they do eat it, they're gonna get a stomach ache and say, oh, I'm not gonna eat that plant again, okay? But Lenten rose also has leathery foliage, very, very thick leathery foliage. It also has a smell to it. If you ever get close to Lenten rose, they're kind of stinky, okay? So there you go. It's like a triple threat. They're ready to go. You never see any deer browsing on them. I should say never, but you rarely see deer browsing on them. So the plants we're gonna show you today have these qualities, and they're the ones that you rarely see browsing issues with. Luckily with perennials, if they do munch on them, guess what, folks? It's like cutting them back, and they're gonna come back and flush back out for you as well. Okay, so let's talk about it. We've got meadow sage. This one, of course, is May night. Really, really dependable, awesome plant, beautiful purple. Oh, is it May night or is it, sorry, East Friesland? They look real close to me. East Friesland is a little bit darker blue, purpley blue, but beautiful spikes, 18 inches tall, awesome. Coupled with Real Glory Shasta Daisy, you can't go wrong. Gorgeous, gorgeous combo for the sun. And then move over to your coneflowers. So your coneflowers, for the most part, are good. Again, the thicker the foliage, the fuzzier the stem, the sharper the flower, better, okay? Well, sometimes, and I'm gonna tell you, my personal problem is that it's early in the season and I don't get out there and protect them, spray a little bit of repellent or maybe throw a little netting over the top. And my problem is I forget when they're little that they're a little bit more succulent. But once they start to push those flower buds up, these flower buds are pretty pokey. So that's good, okay, to keep the repellency away. So your coneflowers, for the most part, just watch out in the spring when they start to first flush out. That's when you need to watch. Catmint, okay? Again, catmint is this plant that's really come on the landscape that everybody loves. It just blooms and blooms, does a great job, sits in its nice little clump, and just goes all season. This plant is super fragrant. It's in the mint family. Salvia is in the mint family. So again, you can't go wrong. Lots of good attributes with this plant. And again, great combo. Dark colored coneflowers, beautiful periwinkle blue on the catmint. Great, okay? Now we're gonna pop over here. So we've got, I don't want you to look at the coral bell, because this coral bell to me is a little bit too slick, okay, a little bit too smooth-leaved. I want you to look for fuzzies. So we're gonna show you some fuzzier ones a little bit further on. But look at, again, the daisy family. Whenever you have daisies, it's gonna work for you, okay? This is the Gaillardia or blankenflower. Gaillardia, no problem. Fuzzy stems, fuzzy foliage, beautiful daisy flower, no problem whatsoever. Butterfly bush. Butterfly bush is so aromatic. I love just standing close to the butterfly bush, smelling that kind of, it's not a fruity aroma, it's just kind of like a flowery aroma, a little bit of minty to it, but the pollinators are all over it. This is a great, great deer resistant plant. Doesn't matter if it's a short variety or tall variety, they're gonna do really, really nicely. We're still in the sun, and Achillea or yarrow is an awesome plant. Ferny texture, very, very aromatic, great plant. That again, it's basically because the texture of the foliage, kind of fuzzy, okay? And then the smell, again, the aroma of this plant. Lots of colors. You have paprika, which is kind of a soft red. You have pomegranate, which has a little bit of cherry in it, really awesome. Apricot delight, beautiful peachy tones and coral tones. Just lovely, lovely plants. So your classic yarrow is yellow typically. And oh, right over there, Taylor, look at, so some of the yellow yarrows here. Summer lemon, beautiful. These guys, again, just because of that texture and the aroma, awesome deer resistance, really, really good. Now we're close to the Agastaki, and so I wanted to show you this. Look at how tall this is. We talk about sometimes how plants stretch in their growing pots. The Agastaki usually doesn't get this tall in the garden, okay, folks? It's almost up to my nose. But your Agastaki, hummingbird mint is a common name. False Aesop is kind of one of the older common names for it. But it's in the mint family, just like the sages, okay? Just like the nepeta, the catmint. So again, really, really good aroma. Wonderful, wonderful plant to have for deer resistance. We talked about daisies earlier with the Gaillardia and the Shasta daisy, and I'm gonna tell you Coreopsis. In the daisy family, same thing, really, really good deer resistance as well. With this family, I don't really know why. They don't really have a smell, an obvious smell to them. Some of the foliage is a little bit thicker. There are hairs on some of the foliage with some of the varieties. This is Stardust, right? Like I think about David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust maybe. But yeah, just kind of cool. So your Coreopsis family, so many varieties. This is Route 66, okay? Really pretty kind of striped red and yellow. You've got doubled varieties like Golden Sphere. You have the classic Moonbeam, beautiful tick seed. This was like perennial plant of the year way back in the 90s. Broad Street, that beautiful kind of russet orange. This is Creme Brulee if you're looking for a soft yellow. I mean, there's so many varieties, and that was just a lot of, these are mostly tick seed varieties, which are, you know, they have native genetics, but there's thicker leaf varieties, grandiflora so larger, doubled flowers. So look for Coreopsis. There's so many to choose from, and they're awesome in the sun. Grasses are starting to really come into flower, producing their inflorescence, especially the Calamagrostis. That's always going to be that first flowering type with featherweed grass. So really, really beautiful varieties, but all grasses. Grasses have fairly sharp edges. I don't know if you've ever run your hand over them, but don't do it or very, very gently, because they do. The edges on them are very sharp. And so needless to say, awesome all the way around. Small, medium, large varieties. They are all wonderful as far as deer resistance is concerned. Doesn't matter, whatever you choose. We're over by the bee balm, and they're just starting to flower here. Balmy series is nice and short. Taller reds or Jacob Klein, really, really great. Again, folks, they're in the mint family. Whenever you feel that square stem, so four-sided flat stem, you've probably got a mint, and most likely it's going to have some aroma to it. And I didn't even really have to touch them, and you can still smell the aroma by bee balm. So that's good. That's really, really good resistance. Same thing, we're by the catmint again. So there's lots of different varieties of catmint. I can't wait until they get maybe different colors. We tried a white, wasn't real popular, but it seems like they're all kind of in that periwinkle purple family right now. So it'd be nice if we could, you know, start growing a pink or whatever. But anyway, so St. John's wort, look at those. I think most people know St. John's wort by either a health supplement or by the St. John's wort berries, like the fruit that they produce, because they're used a lot in floral arrangements. So look it up if you're not familiar with St. John's wort or Hypericum. This is tricolor. Look at how pretty that foliage is. Low mounding clump of St. John's wort, but really, really great. And again, deer resistant, no problem. Now, moving into Russian sage. That's all of these spiky blooms right here. So you can see them. Really aromatic, glaucous too, like have some fuzz on them, or tomentosius. But I'm going to tell you, awesome, just really, really good as far as the deer are concerned. Russian sage is a little bit different. Definitely smells like a culinary sage, has a very strong aroma to it, very pleasing. But is not in the mint family. It has a round stem to it. So kind of different, again, just different species. And then look at the penstemon. We've got a beautiful purple here. Red Rocks is the pink behind me. Penstemon is one of those plants that I think we don't talk about it a lot, and I'm not really sure why. It has native genetics to it, some short, some tall, dark foliage, green foliage obviously, but kind of like the perennial snapdragon. So if you like snapdragons, try growing penstemon. They do a really nice job in the garden, and I just think they get overlooked, but again, they have really good deer resistance to them, so that bonus to me. Now, all of this green, you see all of this? This is all black-eyed Susans or Rudbeckia, okay? So they're coming out. They're just starting to bud here, so we'll see them in a little bit, probably a week or two before we get those first flowers. But the foliage on this, and Taylor can come closer, the stems are really fuzzy all the way up. And then the foliage has fuzz on it as well, on the top and the back sides. Perfect. That is the best kind of fuzziness that you need to really have less browsing occur on those plants. Now, we were going to wrap this way to Taylor. Don't look at the lilies, everybody. That's not going to work. Lilies are not going to work, okay? You have to protect your lilies. But Verbena bonariensis, this is really a great plant. Your verbenas in perennials and also in annuals, good as far as deer resistance is concerned. The Stokes aster, Stokesia here, good, just starting to bud up here. But same thing, if you look close at this flower, it's got these spiky hairs on it. So that's good. That protects that flower. Foliage is a little bit succulent though, so this is one where I don't think you'll have a problem once the flowering's out, but the foliage early on, like when I was talking about the coneflower, watch. You might have to protect this with a repellent or netting or what have you to start off with. And then look at lamb's ear, can't go wrong. Cannot go wrong with lamb's ear. This is Helen von Stein. This is the non-flowering type. Really, really awesome, thick foliage. Lamb's ear will grow, folks. It's not aggressive, but it will definitely fill in an area if you let it fill in. You can also, control it by digging it out and moving it elsewhere or giving it away too. I think that's how a lot of us get lamb's ear. But I'm going to tell you, awesome fuzziness. You won't go wrong. They won't even touch it. Pollinators absolutely love it if you get the flowering type. And this is a flowering type in the same family as Stackies. This is called Humelo. Beautiful purple spike flowers. The foliage is very, very different. It's not. It's definitely not hairy like your normal lamb's ear, but it has some good fuzz on the foliage, and it has that square stem. So it's in the mint family. So just keep that in mind, folks. This is going to be a great one for you. So L combo, Liatris and lavender. And we've got lots of honeybees buzzing around right now in the lavender. But again, lavender, obviously, wonderful fragrance, very, very aromatic. Wonderful as far as keeping the deer away. Slight fuzz to the foliage, so that of course helps. Liatris is really, really nice. Again, I would recommend just watching out for this one and protecting it when it's young and it's just starting to sprout out. When it really starts to produce their flowering spikes, that's when you get really good resistance. They rarely touch it when it's in flower. It's just a lot of texture, a lot of thickness through the flowering stems, but Liatris and lavender, gorgeous. So talk about aromatic, we're by the flowering onions, okay? And there's lots of ornamental types of onions. We've got early May bloomers that you would normally plant in the fall, larger bulb ornamental onions. These are perennial onions. Don't get me wrong, the ornamental onions do come back, but what's newer on the scene in the plant world is these perennial onions that will bloom kind of mid-season for us. They stay nice and short. I kind of think they look like chives on steroids, but they're just gorgeous, and the pollinators love them, and the deer won't touch them, okay? So anything in your onion family you can grow, and you won't have a problem with browsing. So serendipity, and then also millennium. And millennium, look at, we've got one little bud popping up, actually two popping up here, so they're just starting to come out, but that's a good choice if you're looking for some deer-resistant plants. Goldenrod, folks, Solidago, great plant. Again, pollinators, like it's going hand in hand. You've got your daisy family, your mint family, goldenrods. Those are all great for pollinators too, and they're great to keep the deer away. So try your goldenrod. It's right next to a beautiful purple salvia here. This is evening attire. It's so cool. Look at that. Last one for our sunny spots, peonies. Again, good old reliable plant, but you rarely see any damage to them. Probably has a lot to do with the milky sap and so forth with this plant, but again, just reliable and easy as far as sun resistant plants, perennial plants, Yeah, I said in the sun, so that's good. We are in the shade, and we are going to show you some deer resistant plants for the shade, and these do work really, really well. I know that, again, our landscape is kind of perfect for deer because we kind of have our wooded edges or borders, and then they munch around there, and then they come out into the full sun and start munching too. So again, same principles in mind, just shadier aspect. So usually 4 hours or less sunlight here, and right in front of Taylor is the fernleaf bleeding heart, but actually any of the bleeding hearts work really well, the dicentra family. This one, the fernleaf type, has more native genetics to it. It'll bloom longer into the season. It'll also tolerate a little bit more sun. So if you have kind of a partial shaded area, that will work as well. So good plant to have around, awesome for deer resistance. I'm back by the epimedium, and it's not blooming yet. And these little guys are tough in the shade. They have this beautiful heart-shaped foliage. They're sort of woody and stiff-stemmed, which helps. The foliage has some teeth on it too, so it's kind of a rough little character here. They bloom midsummer to later summer. It's got a terrible common name. It's called barrenwort. But we're just going to go by epimedium. Little tiny little, sometimes they call it bishop's cap flowers pop out of this. But if you're looking for something that's really tough, especially under trees, like a dry shade area, this is a great one for deer resistance. I'm also by a close relative of astilbe. This is actually what we call goat's beard, and goat's beard has similar foliage to astilbe, kind of ferny, fine texture to it, but there's some fuzz to this foliage. So look for your goat's beard, look for astilbe. So this is one of the Visions series in front of Taylor. And I'm going to tell you, if you look at the leaves and feel the leaves, there's these hairs, kind of stiff hairs on the tops and the bottoms of the leaves, also along the stem and up until the flowers. So you won't go wrong. Same thing, if you're petting the astilbe, I'm going to say for the most part, I haven't found an astilbe that doesn't have some fuzz on it, but they do really, really nicely in the shade. Astilbe are, of course, going to like a little bit more moisture, okay? So keep them on the moisture side. And then this guy. So this is a coral bell. This is an old classic, again, classic perennial, awarded perennial from the 90s. This is Palace Purple. And Palace Purple, same thing, real thick textured leaves, fuzz on the upper side, kind of sandpapery on the upper side, lower side, white flowering. It's got that beautiful bronzy kind of purpley color to it. It's great. It's just it's a staple in the landscape. If you need a coral bell to really work well for you, this one's going to do a nice job for you. That part shade to full shade, but great deer resistance. I've got this white flower sticking up. This is obedient plant. I'm going to tuck around here. And obedient plant, just so you know, does spread, like it likes to travel, but in a shade garden, sometimes it's nice to kind of fill in those empty spots. And same thing, kind of thick foliage. What their foliage reminds me of is a Shasta daisy. It's got that waxy, kind of leathery feel to it, and they just don't go after this plant. So that's a really good one to look for as well. And on the outside of the obedient plant here, I'm gonna bring this around. This is actually Jacob's ladder, and this one is out of bloom now. It just has like the seed heads on top, but they're really pretty. And I'm going to tell you, Jacob's ladder is stinky. If you've ever broken stems on bleeding heart, the foliage and so forth when you're cleaning up the garden, it's smelly. It doesn't have a great smell to it. And it's the same thing with Jacob's ladder or pulmonium. So try this one as well. Really good. Again, native genes, so does a really nice job. And lady's mantle. So that is this fuzzy leaf in front of us. And the amount of fuzz on here is wonderful. So look for lady's mantle. Always like it when the water droplets just kind of stick on top of the foliage here. Very, very pretty clump forming. Great, you know, kind of chartreusey mossy green in the shade. So look for this one too. Awesome plant. This is Aurelia Sun King. I hate the common name. It's called spikenard. I hate it. So we're just going to call it Aurelia. Aurelia Sun King is a gorgeous shade plant, 3x3. It's mostly foliage. It does bloom little white flowers that, you know, are pretty, but not that much of interest compared to the foliage color and texture. This plant is awesome, guys. You can grow it in the most forgotten spot out in the shade garden, and it'll just fill in and be beautiful for you, and the deer won't touch it. Okay, so this one, great plant. We haven't mentioned ferns yet, so everybody's probably like, where are the ferns? Ferns. It doesn't matter what shape, size, color, variety that you want. Autumn fern, lady fern, Japanese painted fern, maidenhair fern, all of them work. Okay, Christmas fern, cinnamon fern, all of them work literally, and all the different textures and so forth is great. And if you have deer issues, you know that hosta are very hard to grow unless you are planning on, you know, spraying continuously and really trying to, you know, keep the deer off of them. So alternate with ferns, or I should say substitute with ferns. They're always going to be that great alternative for you and grow so well in a lot of not so great soil conditions as well. So do that. The other alternative to hosta besides ferns is Brunera or Brunera. It's called Siberian bug loss. It's called Chinese forget-me-not. I've talked about it a lot, okay? It starts in the spring blooming those cute little bright blue flowers like a forget-me-not, okay? But the foliage is really what we're looking at here, and it's got that beautiful heart-shaped leaf like a hosta, similar to some of the hosta varieties, and that beautiful silver coloration, and it's fuzzy. It's like sandpaper if you rub your hands over it. So that's great. That texture is awesome to keep those deer away. So try that as well. Works really nicely. There's several varieties, you know, Jack of Diamonds, Queen of Hearts, lots of different. Now, I'm in the Coral Bell section, and we've got Mega Caramel here, and I think we have standard size caramel here. So I'm gonna just stay by Mega Caramel, because look at how big these leaves are. And this is what I call a fuzzy Coral Bell or Heuchera. And like I said, folks, the fuzzier, the better. There's full fuzz on both sides of the foliage. There's fuzz coming up the petioles of the foliage. It's just the fuzzier, it's really gonna work out for you. And I feel like the tiarella or foam flowers have a little bit more of that fuzz. There's one hiding in there, Taylor, look at this. So this is a tiarella. This is pink skyrocket. And it's the same thing, fuzzier the better. So come through if you're looking for this type of texture and color for the shade garden, which is always wonderful. Great way to provide that color. Look and pet the foliage and make sure that it's got some substance and some fuzz to it. So you are picking a more deer resistant variety that's available to you out there. Okay. Last notes about, you know, protecting against deer. I'd mentioned that some of these plants, when they start to leaf out at the beginning of the season, the growing season, you might have to protect them. And that's where repellents come into play. There's granular repellents, there's spray repellents, you know, liquid forms. There's all different smells too. Some of them have garlic oil in them. Some of them have rosemary oil in them. Some of them have putrescent egg solids, which are really stinky, as you can imagine. It just kind of depends what works for you and what you can keep up with as far as spraying. And that's why early in the season, maybe you put a little granular repellent as the plants are starting to flush out, and once they start to flush out, no problem whatsoever. It won't get any browsing. Or maybe it's when the fawn start to be born, and that's when you have to watch out. So as those little ones come through and start nibbling, you'll notice some of that damage. So you might have to go out and go ahead and spray repellent. You can also use a barrier. So netting is that perfect barrier. Most of your bird netting, deer netting, you can barely see on plants. You just plop it over the top, maybe take some lawn staples, which are just a long metal staple basically, and you're putting them down or tacking it down with the lawn staples into the soil. And that'll work for a while until that time passes, and there you go. You've got plant material that's going to be protected from browsing. So all of those things work. I hope, again, that you're always looking for the plant material that is more thorny, more prickly or needly, has some aroma to it, good or bad aroma, has leathery foliage, or maybe even good fuzzy foliage or hairy foliage to it. And again, some of those plants that are naturally toxic, they're really not going to browse. So keep that in mind when you're shopping for your deer-resistant perennials. Enjoy.